The air above the Persian Gulf carries the weight of something enormous, something that has not been seen in this part of the world in a very long time. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical energy choke points on the planet, has been effectively shut down since February 28, 2026, when joint military strikes by the United States and Israel on Iran killed the country's Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei. What followed was fast, violent, and is still unfolding. And now, from deep inside Washington's war rooms, a decision is being weighed that could change the shape of this conflict completely. President Donald Trump is weighing several options for dramatically escalating the war against Iran should his latest push for diplomacy fail. Pentagon officials preparing for a next phase of war have drawn up scenarios for deploying troops to seize various targets within Iran. The targets are not cities. They are islands, small strips of land rising from the warm waters of the Persian Gulf. But do not let their size fool you. These islands are the jugular of the global economy. The confrontation took place after years of rising tension over Iran's nuclear program, its ballistic missiles, and its military reach across the Middle East. Attempts to renegotiate a nuclear deal in 2025 and 2026 were unsuccessful. Iran's posture was already in a weakened state after years of sanctions, internal protests, and damage inflicted during a 12-day war with Israel in June 2025. The United States and Israel calculated that the window was open. At 20:38 UTC on February 28th, U.S. President Donald Trump gave the order to proceed with Operation Epic Fury. The bombs fell before dawn. Iran's response came fast and without mercy. Within hours of the strikes, the IRGC transmitted warnings via VHF radio to vessels in the strait, stating that no ships would be permitted to pass. What followed was economic carnage on a historic scale. Tanker traffic dropped first by approximately 70%, and over 150 ships anchored outside the strait to avoid risks. Brent crude oil prices surpassed $100 per barrel on March 8, 2026 for the first time in 4 years, rising to $126 per barrel at its peak. The closure of the strait has been described as the largest disruption to the energy supply since the 1970s energy crisis. The Americans did not sit still. On March 19, 2026, the United States began an aerial campaign against Iranian targets to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. General Dan Kane announced that the U.S. was deploying A-10 Thunderbolt II jets to strike fast attack watercraft and Boeing AH-64 Apache gunships to handle one-way attack drones. Underground bunkers were cracked open from the sky. CENTCOM employed multiple GBU-72 5,000-pound penetrator munitions on underground missile silos along the Iranian coast near the strait, penetrating layers of rock and concrete to destroy bunkers which stored Iran's cruise missiles and anti-ship missiles. But airstrikes alone were not closing the deal. Iran held its position. The strait stayed shut. And the pressure on Washington kept building. Officials and sources familiar with internal discussions describe 4 major final blow options Trump could choose from: invading or blockading Kharg Island, Iran's main oil export hub; invading Larak, an island that helps Iran solidify its control of the Strait of Hormuz; seizing the strategic island of Abu Musa and 2 smaller islands near the western entrance to the strait; and blocking or seizing ships exporting Iranian oil on the eastern side of the Hormuz Strait. Each of these options carries a different weight. Each one is a line that, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. Less than 20 miles off Iran's shallow coastline sits a rare island made of hard coral, a natural geological platform rising from the Persian Gulf that is perfect for one thing: exporting oil. This is Kharg Island, a crucial outcrop 5 miles long. The island is responsible for 90% of Iran's oil exports, making it a lifeline for its economy. A CIA document from 1984, now declassified, described the facilities there as the most vital in Iran's entire oil system. That assessment has not changed. White House officials believe taking Kharg Island would totally bankrupt Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and could potentially lead to a swift end of the war. Trump himself has spoken about this island for decades. As far back as 1988, Trump told a reporter that if one bullet was shot at an American ship, he would go in and take Kharg Island. Now, 38 years later, the opportunity has arrived. On March 10th, U.S. forces struck the island's military satellites. Trump later told reporters that everything had been taken out except the oil pipes. He left the pipes standing, he said, because rebuilding them would take years. That restraint, however, may not last. A source with knowledge of the White House thinking said the plan was to spend about a month weakening the Iranians further with strikes, then take the island and use it as leverage for negotiations. A senior administration official told Axios he wants Hormuz open. If he has to take Kharg Island to make it happen, that's going to happen. But Kharg is not the only island on the map. Larak Island lies at the narrowest point of the Strait of Hormuz and is also a key export point for Iran's oil industry. Iran uses Larak, which has a network of bunkers and attack craft that can destroy cargo ships, to monitor and maintain control over the strait. Seizing Larak could limit Iran's ability to harass ships and deploy mines, but the island is heavily fortified and would be a hard target. Then there is Abu Musa. Abu Musa and two smaller islands lie near the western entrance to the strait. They are controlled by Iran, but also claimed by the UAE. Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf appeared to reference this when he posted online that Iranian intelligence suggests Iran's enemies, with the support of a country in the region, are preparing an operation to occupy one of Iran's islands, and warned that all enemy movements are under surveillance and any action would result in vital infrastructure of that regional country being targeted without limitation. The regional country he appeared to be pointing at was the UAE. The military machinery is already moving. The Pentagon is reportedly preparing to send about 3,000 troops from the Army's 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East, alongside 2 Marine Expeditionary Units to assist military operations in Iran. Officials said that the U.S. military is dispatching 2,500 additional Marines to the Middle East, who are trained to conduct amphibious landings. These are not peacekeeping forces. Amphibious Marines train for one thing above all else: hitting a shore. The risks are enormous. Before any ground operation, forces would have to pass through the Strait of Hormuz and contend with Iranian drones, ballistic missiles, and mines in the waterway. Once in position off Kharg, the Marines would need ironclad air and sea superiority over at least 100 miles around the island, according to former NATO Supreme Allied Commander James Stavridis. Iran has also not been quiet about the consequences. Iran's Defense Council warned that any attack on Iran's coasts or islands would trigger mine laying across Gulf sea lanes that could effectively block maritime traffic beyond the narrow strait. Gulf allies are privately urging the Trump administration against putting boots on the ground to occupy Kharg Island. The concern is that occupying the island with U.S. troops would result in high casualties, likely triggering Iranian retaliation against Gulf countries' infrastructure. Diplomacy is running parallel to all of this, though its foundations are fragile. Trump said he was delaying a deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, writing on Truth Social that he was pausing the period of energy plant destruction by 10 days to April 6, 2026, saying talks were ongoing and going very well. But Iran's foreign ministry said there is no dialogue between Tehran and Washington. A 15-point peace proposal drawn up by Trump officials was swiftly rejected by Iran. The regime's own demands, which included paying war damages and reparations, were deemed a non-starter. The Strait of Hormuz has been effectively closed for almost 4 weeks, throwing global oil markets into chaos, and there is no clear end in sight. Iran's unconventional warfare methods, including cheap drones and sea mines, and its geography, make it harder for the United States or others to defend vessels or to secure the strait militarily. The world watches the Persian Gulf now the same way past generations watched the beaches of Normandy or the jungles of Vietnam. Something is being decided, not just in the Pentagon's war rooms or on Trump's social media feed, but on the water and in the wind above these islands. The math of empire and oil and military reach is being worked out in real time, with real consequences for the crews of tankers that still sit anchored outside the strait, for the billions of people whose food and fuel prices rise with every passing day, and for the Marines who may soon be told to get into the boats. The decision has not yet been made, but the boots are already being laced up.